Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Corporate Cafe, the podcast where we invite you to sit back, stick the kettle on, and join us in conversation with successful entrepreneurs and industry professionals. My name is James, and today on the show, I'm joined by the super successful Stephanie Taylor, who is the co-founder of HMO Heaven and Rent to Rent Success, who changed her life around by getting into property and creating a new life for herself with her growing businesses. So hello, Stephanie. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Hello, James. It's great to be here. I've been really enjoying the show.
And it's great to have you here on the show to learn more about your business journey. But of course, before we can get into all of that, I have one question to ask you first. As you are in the Corporate Cafe, what is your drink order?
I am going to go for it just straight, and I'm going to go for an Americano.
Oh, I like that. Just go for it nice and simple, eh? Why not? Today, I think I'm going to go for an oat mocha because honestly, when they're done right, they're absolutely delicious. And if there's one thing that I know about the Corporate Cafe, it's that our mochas are unmatched. So whilst our drinks are getting made for us, why don't you tell me a bit more about who you are and what your business is?
Yeah, so as you said, I'm Stephanie Taylor, and I'm co-founder of two businesses. Well, it's actually several businesses, but it's three main strands. So the first one you mentioned is HMO Heaven. It's a house share management business. So we transform house shares from hellish to heavenly, and we give landlords guaranteed rent, freedom from tenant management, and total peace of mind. And for our housemates, it's beautiful, affordable homes that they love to live in. So that's the property management side, but we also have our own property portfolio, myself and my sister Nikki, and we own blocks of flats, or we buy and develop and transform blocks of flats, also house shares, and also commercial buildings which we convert. So that's the second tranche of businesses. And then the third set is that we now teach other people how to start their property business, to invest in properties, to make money from properties they don't own, and the ethical way to do that. And that's called Rent to Rent Success.
So basically, you're a very busy woman. It sounds like you have a lot going on that you're overseeing, but for now, let's start off with HMO Heaven, as that was the first business that you mentioned. So when did you start that business, and what actually motivated you to start a business in the first place?
Yeah, so it started in 2016. I was working in Bristol. I was working in financial services, quite a good job. It was a contractor role, so I had to set up my own limited company and so on and work through the limited company for a bank. And it was good in many ways. But I know a lot of people get these wake up calls. They're just these ordinary moments where it just changes the way you think. And what happened for me was my mum called me up one morning and I was getting ready for work, and I was not patient or listening. I was sort of half thinking about other things and trying to end the phone call, not that subtly. And when I was reflecting back on it in the afternoon at work at my desk, I was reflecting back on, the presentation went well. I'd had a presentation that morning. That was partly why I was distracted. And I was a bit nervous about it. So I had that sort of nervous energy. And when I was sitting there in the afternoon feeling relieved that it had all gone well, that's when I realized, oh my gosh, it didn't matter. It didn't matter. The presentation didn't matter. And I was just thinking of my mum waking up on her own, feeling unwell, needing a bit of support and reassurance, and just not getting it at all. And I just thought it's gonna go more this direction because, as people get older, often they need you more and they have more time, and I want to be there more as well. And I thought, how can I be able to be there more for my mum? And not only that, just thinking about my whole life. Where do I want to be? Where do I want to spend the majority of my time? And it wasn't with what I was doing at that time. Some people do have jobs that really fulfill them in lots of different ways, but that wasn't the case for me. So that was the inspiration to look into the scary world of business and see what I felt that I could do, because I didn't really feel very confident about that.
Right, okay. So you'd noticed that your relationships with your work were taking precedent over your personal relationships with your family and realized that wasn't the way that you wanted to continue living your life. So started looking into how you could set up your own business to change all of that. And that's great, but where did the idea of getting into property come from? Did you always intend to get into property, or did you find it in your search and just naturally gravitate towards it?
Yeah, good question. So, where it came from was I was nervous, as I say, about setting up in business. I really didn't think, I thought business was this whole mysterious world for other people who had all sorts of secrets that I didn't have. But why property seemed a bit more accessible was because most of us here in the UK know people who have either made a lot of money through property or been able to leave their job through property. And so it just piqued my curiosity when I stumbled across it in my mind. And I thought property is the way. And I started going to property events back in the days where we could. And there were property networking events on most, a few, at least one a week. And I would attend them all and absolutely be blown away by all that was possible. Because, yes, of course, there were lots of strategies where you required tens or hundreds of thousands of pounds to get started, like developments and new builds and things like that. But there were also lots of strategies where you could get started with very little money and still have a profitable property business. That's a bit of a tongue twister. But without needing to invest as much. And when I heard about these different strategies, I thought, okay, that sounds like a great way for me to get started.
Yeah, I agree. Most of us have that curiosity of investing in property. It's like you said, we all see those success stories of people making huge profits out of it. I've personally grown up in a house where Homes Under the Hammer was always on in the background, and you'll be seeing people buy houses and do them up for 100,000, and then they're estimated to sell around 150,000. But people like me can see things like that and think, well, that's great, and I'd love to be doing that, but it doesn't seem possible for me. So, when you decided that you wanted to get into property, how did you go about the process of getting it started off? What did you have to do to get this business idea up and running?
Yeah, well, the first bits feel like quite straightforward because, you register your limited company and, decide the structure of it and make agreements. As I say, I originally started it on my own, but I hadn't been running it very long when my sister decided to come in with me 50-50. I mean, only a matter of weeks. And so we then needed to update all that and make our agreements between ourselves. And then we just had our plan for what we were going to achieve within the business in the first year. We had our values that we set for the business as well. So just a few things like that, really.
And did you have much business experience before you started doing all of this then?
No, James, I'd had more that was a hobby business. I look back on it now. I had no clue that there's a business processes and systems and that there's a step-by-step system for scaling businesses in each individual sector. There's a proven success path. You don't have to work things out yourself. You don't have to do everything yourself. And previously I'd had a little social club where I did everything myself and burnt myself out after 7 years. It was just more of a hobby business. It did replace my salary, but it wasn't as good as having a job because the holidays weren't as good. The boss was a bit crazy. And so at the end of that experience, I really was left with the feeling that I didn't know how to do business, that I wouldn't be successful in business. So I was a bit nervous about going into business again. But what happened early on in this new business is that I realized there's a success system. There's a step-by-step system for success. To go from starting to scaling, there's a set process. And if you follow that set process, then you won't go wrong, or you've got much more chance of success. And once you understand the process, you can also innovate on that process and change the process and do unique things against that process. But knowing that there was a system, that was the game changer for me, because I thought, I don't have to work this out. This already exists. I can just follow the path.
So it sounds like you owe a lot of your successes with your business to this system that you'd found out, which means I have to ask, what is this success system that you found out? Because I'm still associating property with a lot of upfront investment and being totally inaccessible, but it sounds like that just simply wasn't the case for you.
Lots of people think you need so much money to get into property, and that's what I thought as well, but you don't, because I'll just briefly explain what rent to rent is. It's where you normally you would take £50,000, let's just say, buy a property. That's for the deposit and buying costs, and then you pay the mortgage for the rest, and you're making £200 or £300 a month cash flow on that property after all your bills are paid. So you actually need a lot of £50,000 to bring that up to where it can replace your salary or beyond that. So that's why a lot of people think, oh, I can't do it. Or maybe they've already got one buy to let and they're saving up for the next one. And that's what I thought. But actually, you can also make money from properties you don't own in an ethical way where everybody wins. So you rent the property from the owner, usually for 3 to 5 years. For the owner, what they're getting is guaranteed rent, freedom from tenant management, and total peace of mind. And then you take that property, do it up a bit, and then rent it out to housemates at still an affordable rent. You've made it beautiful now, you're offering an amazing service. So those housemates are getting great value as well. And you get to make money on each of those properties that you don't own. So you only had to invest maybe a few hundred or a few £1,000s instead of 50,000. And each of those properties that you manage, you will make for your business between 500 and over £1,000 each month. So it's a really phenomenal way to be able to scale up your cash flow without needing to scale up your investment so much.
See, that's really fascinating because I didn't even know that that was a way that you could get into property. Whilst you were explaining about renting from a landlord and then renting out the property to others, that's just something that would never come to mind for me because it just sounds like something that wouldn't be possible. And then on top of that, you're saying that you can make between £500 to £1,000 per month per property. It's just crazy numbers as soon as you get more properties involved. But just to contextualise the numbers a bit more, what sort of profits have you been seeing with HMO Heaven, and when did you start seeing those sort of numbers appear?
Well, within the first 3 years, so we started in 2016 very tentatively, and within the first 3 years, we attracted contracts worth over £2 million. Now, those contracts are over 3 and 5 years, and we continue to grow from there. Last year, we still took on 2020, the year of craziness, and we still continue to grow then.
Yeah, the year of craziness indeed. But going into the pandemic, your business was really taking off and you were seeing a lot more income, effectively proving that your system works. But to talk about 2020, so many industries just had to stop trading as it was becoming impossible due to store closures and supply shipments coming to a halt. But property is different because, pandemic or not, people are still going to need property as it's a necessity. So what sort of things were happening to the business during the pandemic and how did your company respond to that?
So what happened for us was with HMO Heaven managing house shares, most of our housemates are young professionals. So many of them went back home to their own family homes for the lockdown, or they may have lost their job and so decided to move out. So that was a bit worrying at first because nobody was moving in and people were moving out. And the reason why we are able to offer the guaranteed rents is because when people move out, we can move other people in really quickly, and we manage it really systematically and keep the properties to a high standard so that when people do move out, it's easy to reshow the room and somebody else will want to move in. So when you then start having those gaps in your cash flow because people are moving out and you cannot move anybody else in, not only that, say somebody comes on a 6 months contract, they're only a month in and they've moved back to their parents because of Corona, you can't then hold them to the additional 5 months that they've signed up to. So there were a lot of ways that we sort of had to roll with the punches and take some losses, really. Not losses overall, but gaps, dips in cash flow. But luckily for us, when, as you said, James, people still do need somewhere to live. And I was surprised at the strength of it. Once the first lockdown ended, the demand was great, and we were able to benefit because a lot of the other letting agents and landlords were not on the portals, were not there. They were maybe, in case of agents, furloughed or not paying attention. So people couldn't actually get viewings for properties. But luckily we were there. And so we found that we were able to fill that gap back in very quickly, and also take on some new properties, because some of our landlords had properties with other people but who fell apart, in the lockdown. And so we were offered much more properties than we would have been if it hadn't been a lockdown, I think.
Yeah, that's a good point actually, as most people would have been looking at moving out as they could no longer afford their rent anymore. But then it's interesting to me that the ways that the pandemic affected larger letting agencies when people started looking at getting into properties again didn't actually affect you, because as you're a smaller business, you were able to oversee the process more personally and ensure that you could contact these customers and get them into properties at a time where staff members in larger firms have perhaps been furloughed or are just generally more unresponsive. So I guess that's a perk of being a small team rather than a big company, because you're able to jump in and do things more personally rather than relying on a larger cohort of staff to do that for you. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, absolutely. There's three permanent people, but then of course we've got a team of people we work with across all the properties. But absolutely, we're much more agile, and we're much more focused on the details. And that's why as well, James, that the landlords love working with us, because we're a small company, not in spite of it. Because if they go to, say, a high street letting agent, that agent might have hundreds of properties, and they won't be a specialist in house shares, which does require more time and attention than managing family homes. So we're able to dedicate that, and so we're able to give an overall better service.
Yeah, definitely. So I guess what our listeners can take from that is don't be scared of the bigger companies in the same field as you, because there's actually advantages to being a smaller business which can prove to benefit you as you're able to become more versatile as a business. So you've spoken about how landlords enjoy working with you, and I can see on your website that you have a testimonial section where you highlight the reviews that you've had from both tenants and landlords that you've worked with. So I imagine that reputation is actually quite a big thing for your company, as it should be, because people saying good things about the business is one of the best forms of advertising. So how would you say that you're able to uphold your reputation, and what are the best ways of getting your reputation out there?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think the first thing is from the values of your business, that helps it to trickle down into everything you do. So one of our values is excellence, and our name, HMO Heaven, is about giving everyone we work with a heavenly experience of working with us. We really want everyone to be delighted that they were working with us. And so when anything happens, lockdown or anything, we think to ourselves, we have a little freak out first, and then think to ourselves, okay, well, what can we do here? How can we deliver the service, or how can we go above and beyond what people are expecting? How can we take people with us? And then we look at how to implement that. So that's what we did at the beginning of lockdown. And how did we get the message out there? Now, I think it's really important for people to see what you do, for you not just to explain what you do. So obviously on our website, we're going to say we're great. But when people see, as you said, the reviews have been very powerful, other people saying we're great, especially for a letting agency business, because you notice that for businesses which are lettings agents, often the views, even for the good ones, are quite mixed. So we work hard to provide that same exceptional service, not just to the property owners, the landlords, but also to our housemates, because that's where it really matters. We want a lot of people we get through referrals. And the other way we show what we do is on social media. We do videos of before and afters of the properties. They're also on the website. So people can see, look, this is the property before we were involved, and this is the property after we were involved. And I think people get more from when they can see it for themselves, or they can hear it from other people, as well as you explaining.
Yeah, I imagine it's tough to keep every customer satisfied as a letting agency because everyone will have different ways of living and different expectations from accommodation. And it's so much different than, for example, buying a laptop because once that sale's done, you won't hear much from the customer unless there's potential damages. But with renting out property, you have to remain in constant communication with the tenant for the months or years that they're living there, meaning that you're constantly having to uphold that reputation. So, in a way, these positive reviews mean even more to the company and the customers because it's about both the service that you offer and the relationships that you create with the tenants and the landlords that you're in business with. So you've got HMO Heaven, where you're implementing this tried and tested strategy of property management, and you've now also got your additional business, Rent to Rent Success, which is a more community driven business to help people get into property management too. So I was wondering if you could just tell me a bit more about what Rent to Rent Success is and why you decided to start this company too.
Yeah, great question. It's just been one of the joys of my life, really. First of all, we didn't expect to be so successful in business. And then because we have a team now in that business, I then have all this time. And Rent to Rent Success really came about because people were asking me, oh, how are you doing it? I know that weren't you working in a bank? Hang on a moment. And then suddenly I'm always on these videos showing properties. And so people were curious. And as well, I was also very excited to say to people, look, absolutely, you could get into property. And there is this way where you don't necessarily have to start off by buying it. So in a short way, people were curious, and also I was excited, and I was telling people on videos on my Facebook page. I'm quite a shy person by nature, but I have become much more confident with speaking on podcasts and making videos and just sharing what we were doing. I think because the excitement of what we were doing and how it could help other people, how it helped us, got me over my fears, I think.
Yeah, it sounds great that you're able to work on your own confidence as well whilst you're helping other people out. And it just reminds me of the conversation that we both had earlier when you were explaining to me what rent to rent actually is. And I was just shocked that it's an actual strategy that people can use to get into property. So it makes total sense that you'd start up Rent to Rent Success to pass the information on and show people that actually this is possible and guide them through the steps to making it possible. And I know as part of Rent to Rent Success, you've actually just released a book too. So could you tell me a bit more about the book and why you decided to write that?
Yeah, the book is, I just feel so delighted that we now have the book. And the reason we did the book is, although people can get snippets in the podcast and the YouTube channel, the book is the complete rent to rent success system. It's a 6-step system to help people make money from property without buying it. It's our ethical system to do that because I know that a lot of these creative property strategies can seem like they're a bit scammy or a bit sleazy. And let's be honest, there have been people who in the past have been sleazy with it. But this is a legal, ethical way to be able to provide a win-win-win service and make money from it. And it's a great first step for many people in property. So it's a full overview of the blueprint for rent to rent success is in that book.
I think it's such a kind gesture for you to write this book to provide to people and help motivate them on their ways to making the same successes that you've made. And I know that on top of the book, you've also got the Rent to Rent Success podcast that you run and you create content on YouTube too, all whilst running HMO Heaven and the other property business that you're running too. So I have to ask, what sort of values do you find in releasing these community-driven projects? Because I don't think anybody would blame you if you just took your profits and went and chilled out. But you're doing so much to help people out and show them how to get their foot in the door, and I'm just wondering why that is.
Oh, yeah. I mean, when I first started, James, we were just doing the property and I just wanted to share the words. I didn't want anyone to think I thought I knew more about it than they did. I didn't want anyone to think that. I was very worried about what people thought. But I would go online and say, wow, this is what you do. You can rent the property. This is how it was when we rented it. This is how we've done it up. And this is how it works as a business. And you could do this where you are and transform some of these horrible properties into beautiful properties. So I was just explaining to people how to do it. But what happened was a community built up around that. And I just enjoyed that. I enjoyed talking to the people, answering the questions, seeing the engagement, having people say, oh, Stephanie, since I saw you did this, I've tried it, I've done it where I am. And I just got such a lot of excitement and satisfaction out of that. And then but then people kept asking for more. Do we do a course? And at the time, the idea of teaching a course on how to go from having the idea to having the cash flowing property, going through all of those processes along the way of setting up your business, marketing, magnetic marketing to your perfect customers, and making the deals, and then managing a multiply. But it just all seemed too much because we were in the throes of getting everything set up, and we had yet to outsource the major part of the day-to-day in that business. But fast forward to now, we have got this amazing program where we can take people through step by step in the rent to rent success system. And I love doing that because so many people have been able to give up their jobs and go full time, or they just have it on the side and use that money to invest in property, to actually buy properties as well. So it's just really been life changing because to put that information out there, I've had to grow in a way, get over myself, feel less nervous, feel less worried about what people think. So I've had to keep getting past all my mental blocks to keep improving. But also through the coaching, we've helped people get past all of their mental blocks to feel like they can do it, and they actually do it.
Well, I think it's very admirable of you, and it's something that us here at Unicorn Excess, the company behind this podcast, are all about. We're all about spreading that act of kindness in business. And one thing that you just mentioned that I hadn't even considered is that you can teach people how to do something, but if they aren't able to overcome their own mental blocks first, they'll never be able to put it into practice and get to the position that they want to be in. So, do you have any advice for people to get past those mental blocks?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think the main tip that I wish that I had known is it's totally normal, because you then say to yourself, oh, I feel terrified, I feel scared, there's something wrong here, maybe I should turn around, maybe I should go home, I don't think I should be out here, so maybe somebody's going to see me out here thinking I can do business, and I'm going to laugh. But no, that's absolutely normal, because that's just what your brain does. It's programmed to do that. Most of our brains are doing it. So if I'd known it was normal, I wouldn't have let it bother me so much. So I think that's just it. Know that your brain is just there to protect you. I talk about it as the two parts of the brain. You've heard, James, of the chimp brain, but it's a similar theory where you've got your game changer brain. Your game changer brain wants to start a business. Your game changer brain is making all these amazing plans. Your game changer brain is listening to this podcast. But then you've also got your toddler brain. Your toddler brain wants to keep you alive. That's its number one. And it does that by avoiding pain, seeking pleasure, and doing one and two, using as little energy as possible. So your toddler will be saying, eat that thing. Don't do anything scary. Don't start your business. This looks terrifying. We've never done this before. Why do you think you can do this? And you just need to then soothe your toddler brain and move on anyway. Lovingly say, thanks for pointing this out, but we're going to be okay. We're not going to die. So the main message is back yourself 100%, back your dreams 100%, because there will be enough obstacles out there and around without you being your own inner obstacle. So be compassionate, back yourself 100%, and keep moving forward.
Very well said. It's about changing your mindset and knowing that it is possible as long as you commit to it and back yourself along the way. So following on from that, once people are able to overcome those mental blocks, the next obstacle they could face is the financial side of setting up a property business. You've been saying how rent-to-rent success requires a lot less money than other strategies, but you'll still need money to do it. So how did you approach your business from the financial side?
Yeah, great question. Basically, I saved up. I had two different phases. So I had my own business about 7 years. That's the one I mentioned, more of a hobby. And then I felt quite burnt out. So when I left that, I was a bit down and I was doing all these low paid jobs, just working out what to do next. And I didn't really have so much confidence, even though I'd already had my own business. I have 3 degrees. So I don't know, brains are funny things. So I was a bit down and I was doing all these low paid jobs. But eventually I realized that the same type of work in financial services, in contracting, you get paid almost the same as what I was getting in a week, in a day, and sometimes more than. So that was the work I was doing. So while I was doing that work, I was able to then save. And also I reduced my living costs because I moved to Newport, where our property business is based, where living costs are much lower than in Bristol. So a couple of things that made it sustainable. And what my leap was, James, was that I thought, if it goes well, that's great. But if it doesn't go well, I could always go back and get another job.
Well, it's a simple case of no risk, no reward, really, isn't it? And by making a couple of changes to your lifestyle, by striving to get into the financial services and moving to a cheaper area, you were able to put yourself into a position where you could start saving money to make this happen. And having the confidence in yourself to try it out and know that you can just get another job if it doesn't work is really utilising that game changer brain, isn't it? But some people may not be able to do the same things that you were able to do to help them out with the financial side. So, how would you advise people in terms of the financial side, based on what you now know regarding the industry?
Yeah, I think this is the due diligence of beforehand, is just to make sure that you feel certainty in your numbers. And that's either to have experience yourself or to talk to people who are experienced, and then to really think it through, because you need to be able to take advice from other people. This is what we found when we were new. We didn't know everything. We would take advice from other people and then decide, what does this make sense for us? Because I can see now from a different vantage point that not everyone gives you good advice. So, so it's just to know where you want to get to. So, for example, if you want to get to, I own my own property, and then you let your brain work on it. How could I do that? I could buy a house converted into two flats and buy it with a sibling. Or I could buy with my parents a house converted into two flats, live in one flat and rent out the other one and pay back, have the other person's payment, cover my whole mortgage and living expenses for the place I'm living. For some people, it might be, where do I want to live? Do I want to live in central London? Or are there other places I could live and be absolutely just as happy and have a great life that would allow me to get onto the property ladder more quickly?
That's a very good point, actually. There's no point trying to jump onto the property ladder in central London as your first move, as that one will take you much longer to pay off before it becomes a worthwhile investment. But that's great advice there on looking at investing in property with family or friends to start off with, as it splits the upfront cost and can be a great starting point for everyone involved in the process to progress in property if they wanted to. So, overall, do you wish that you'd started this process off earlier in your life, or do you think that you needed all of these life experiences that you've had to get you to where you are now?
I think every life path is how it was meant to be. So I do sometimes think, oh, I wasted, 20 years. But everybody's path is how it's meant to be. So I was supposed to have all of the hardships I had and all of the difficulties and challenges and obstacles that I overcame were supposed to happen to me so that I could be here now and be so grateful every day when I wake up, whether it's coronavirus or whether there's something crazy going on in one of our businesses. But whatever happens, I feel so grateful because we have this business that is, yes, part of the pleasure and the pride is in the income generation, but also it's what we get to do for people as part of what we do, like the homes that we create for people, the experience that we give to our landlords as well, and also the partnerships we have. Because don't know if you've heard of it, James, but there's something called B1G1. It's buy1give1.com. It's an online platform where through your business, you can give every day through your business. So you can link it to whatever you want. So you might link it to purchases. So when people purchase, you give a giving. So we're giving to one of the projects we're giving to is children in Kenya. There are ones all across the UK and all over the world. And it just gives an extra dimension of joy where part of what you create is a gift for people who need it.
Honestly, if there's one main takeaway that I'm getting from this interview, it's that you're just a wonderful person, aren't you? I'd not heard of B1G1 before, but it sounds like such an incredible platform to be a part of, and it's just one more way that you've been able to share your successes in a way that helps other people. And we have been talking about the successes that you've had with your business a lot so far. So I am going to have to play devil's advocate quickly because we're all only human. So I imagine there must have been some challenges that you faced along the way. So if you could just tell me about any challenges that you faced and how you were able to overcome them, as surely it can't have all been smooth sailing.
No, no, not at all. It's definitely had its ups and downs. I suppose the biggest challenge that we had at the very beginning was staff and just not wanting. Your last guest was saying, you just want your baby. You just want it all to be, we had very high standards for how we're managing the properties, how we're interacting with the housemates, how we're dressing the rooms. We just thought nobody else could do it like us. But at the same time, we don't want to be the one to go and do all of it because we can't grow the business while we're still doing all of the operational stuff. And so it took us a long time to get to the place where we took on our first full-time employee. But that was really the game changer, was having that first full-time employee and also having the systems where he could implement it actually better than we could.
Yeah, you mentioned that Jake, my last guest, had the same challenge that you had in regards to letting go and getting staff in to take on some other roles for you. But I actually think that everyone that I've interviewed so far has mentioned a similar situation of not wanting to let go or delegate your duties onto other people because of your attachment to the company and feeling like you have to or really want to do everything for yourself. But then you've all gone on to talk about the values of hiring new members of staff and getting other people to join the business on its journey. And I find it so interesting how this mentality seems to be shared by a lot of entrepreneurs as they're first stepping into the business world. But the outcome is always the same. That hiring new people to help out and potentially cover your weaknesses is always a great move for the business. So overall, if you could give anybody wanting to get into property some advice, what advice would you have for them?
I would say don't wait to buy property and wait. So look at the resources you have, look at the resources you need. The younger you are, the better it is because you get to compound on time. Time is such a great grower of things. But if you're older, like I was when I started, over 45, just go for it because the best time to buy property is always yesterday, 10 years ago. But the next best time is right now. And you might be listening and thinking, but I'm in debt, but I've got bad credit, but I've got this. But you can start right now with what you have and, work towards fixing your credit, work towards saving, work towards finding a much better paid job like I did initially. And then you can look and see, what can I do? And say, for example, young people or younger people, well, I suppose why put an age on it, might be able to work with family and friends. So your family, your parents and other people might come in with you to help you on the first one. And then the profit from that, you can pay them back and then move on your own. So there's lots and lots of different ways to do it. And we actually, if people want to contact me, I do run a series of clubhouse rooms, which are about getting on the property ladder, because I am passionate about suggesting people get on the property ladder. I left it till much later in life, and I really would love to see many more people getting onto the property ladder. Even if you don't want to have a property business or property investment, just buying your own home. For those who want to but feel they can't, you can.
And I'd say it's definitely worth taking you up on that offer after how you've just been able to evidence over the past 40 minutes all of the knowledge and information that you have on getting into property. It just seems like you'd be the perfect person to come to for advice for that. So looking at the future now, what sort of things do you have planned for all of your businesses over the coming years?
Yeah, HMO Heaven, we really want to grow that business. We want to buy more of the blocks of flats in our asset owning business. And in Rent to Rent Success, we just want to take the word out there to people who want to get started in property, initially with a property business, that absolutely, yes, you can make money from property, and there is an ethical way to do it where everybody wins. So we're thrilled about the book, and it has over, it's one of my proudest moments, and it's got it well over 100 5-star reviews on Amazon. And I would like to offer your listeners, James, if anybody would like a copy of the book, if they leave a review for your podcast in the podcast app where they listen and screenshot it and email me, I will post them a copy of the book to the UK, or a PDF copy if it's internationally.
That's a fantastic offer, Stephanie, and something that we hadn't actually spoken about prior, so it has taken me by surprise, but definitely it's something that all of you listening should be taking advantage of. I know that not all streaming platforms allow you to leave a review. I know that Podbean and Apple Music do, but I don't think Spotify does. So if you do want to partake in this giveaway and your streaming platform doesn't allow you to do that, then you can head to our Instagram page at GetUnicornXS and send us a review on there. I'll make sure to include all information on this giveaway in the bio for this episode, so everyone who wants to partake can see what they need to do to get their hands on a free copy of this book. So make sure to check the bio for this episode if you haven't already, as all information will be there. And thank you so much, Stephanie, for doing that. It's such a lovely gesture to once again spread the act of kindness in business. So to conclude the episode now, if people want to find out any more about your businesses, where can they find you?
Yeah, so we have hmoheaven.co.uk, and we've got rent2rentsuccess.com. And if people want to join our community about rent to rent, we have the Rent to Rent Success Secrets Facebook group. And from there, you'll be able to find all of the other goodies that we have online.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much, Stephanie, for joining me on the show today. I feel like we could talk for so much longer, but we'll have to save it for another time. But you've been a great guest and really helped to break down some barriers that people may have with getting into property. And I look forward to becoming a part of your community myself, so I can witness you doing what you do best firsthand. So thank you very much again.
Brilliant. Thanks, James.
And thank you to our listeners for joining us in the Corporate Cafe. But unfortunately, it's coming up to closing time now, and I'm pretty sure we all have a giveaway to be participating in now anyway, don't we? So just to remind you again about that giveaway, if you would like to receive a free copy of the Rent to Rent Success book and learn how you can start making money in property with little investment, then make sure to give our podcast a review, either on your streaming service or via our Instagram at GetUnicornXS, and email a screenshot of the review to Stephanie. If you have any friends you know who would love a copy of the book, make sure to share the podcast with them and get them involved too. And whilst you're doing all of that, why not give the podcast and our Instagram a follow so you can keep up to date with everything that we're doing and all future giveaways we may potentially have on the show. All information regarding the giveaway, including the email address that you need to send the screenshot to, will be included in the bio of this episode. Thank you all again for listening, and we'll see you next time when we're in conversation with another successful entrepreneur. But until then, it's goodbye for now.